Give them all the encouragement you can, ladies and
gentlemen. Ladies and gentlemen, gathering around the Field of Honour here. In just a couple of minutes' time, Danelaw Medieval Fighting Society and Uppsala Medieval Society will be kicking off with our 11:30 foot combat. Now, ladies and gentlemen, in the Field of Honour, we'll be using authentic weapons and armour, and we'll be actually belting each other. So, ladies and gentlemen, this will be going on mostly while jousting's over, but we'll be kicking off at exactly 11:30. At the same time, there will also be a presentation in the common.
It's like, you know, sitting inside an oven.
Somebody.
So, ladies and gentlemen, this is not as easy as we make it look. As we get going here, you need to choose your knight and give them a cheer!
So, yep, Staccato School of Swordsmanship, they are kicking off in the common. And their microphone is on the lighting tower, okay? On the lighting tower, Staccato.
How's that for accuracy?
Alright, so that's kicking off at 11:30. Now, ladies and gentlemen, before we kick off, I'm just going to give you a bit of an explanation about what goes on here. Ladies and gentlemen, first of all, the weapons that we are using are real, okay? They're not fake. They are all authentic reconstructions of weapons that were used in medieval times to kill people. Warriors, if you could please hand your weapons out to the crowd so they can have a feel. What you'll notice, ladies and gentlemen, is that our weapons are made exactly the same way as weapons were in medieval times that were used on the battlefield to kill people. So you can get hurt if you use them. The only difference between the weapons that we are using and the weapons that were used in medieval times is that we've taken the sharp edge off so that we can't punch one another. However, when you get hit by one of these weapons, it is like being hit with a baseball bat or a crowbar, okay? It does hurt. So, ladies and gentlemen, no matter what, do not try and pick up these sorts of weapons and have a go by yourselves without a bit of training, because you'll get really, really badly hurt. The second thing that keeps us safe, right, aside from the fact that we're using weapons that can hurt one another, is that we are wearing armour. You'll notice that everyone in the combat area is wearing a helmet. The helmets are designed to take a hit, okay? And some of the guys are also wearing body armour, and that helps also to reduce the risk of injury. But the most important thing that stops us getting hurt is that we're actually trained. Regardless of how young our combatants are, or for that matter, how incredibly old they are, everyone is trained to a standard to make sure that we can actually do this safely. Ladies and gentlemen, for your own safety, do not try this at home, okay? Can I get you all to repeat after me? I will not try this at home.
I will not try this at home.
There, see the kid in the hat just said, I will not try this till I get home. Okay, no. No, ladies and gentlemen, please, don't do it at home. It is a hazardous activity if you're not trained in it. We're going to do it today and we don't expect anyone to get hurt, and we know how to minimise our risks. Now, ladies and gentlemen, the other thing that I want to point out is that there is a double barrier between you and us, okay? Council did not put these double barriers up for our protection, okay? They put it in for your protection, and there's a double set because we need to keep you away from us, okay? Now, ladies and gentlemen, there's a set of flags on the outside of the barrier. Can I ask everybody to please take one step back from those flags, okay? So one step back. People on top of the hill, one step back. People on this side of the hill, one step back. And people at the bottom, just one step back. Now, the reason that we need you to take one step back is if we get pushed up against the inner barrier and then the boys go for a backswing, you can see that we can still quite easily hit you in the head, okay? So that barrier is there for your protection. This is the third thing I'd like to talk to you about now that safety is out of the way. I want to talk about the contract between you and us, okay? Believe me, when we hit each other, even though we're doing a Viking using a two-handed axe, who do you want to see fight, Peter? You in the hat, how about it? Who do you want to see fight? Him, who's him? The guy with the shield, they've all got shields. The yellow and blue shield. Ladies and gentlemen, Martin from Uppsala versus Peter from Danelaw. Can you count them in? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. That was over pretty quick. Can we give another round of applause for Martin of Uppsala? Now, ladies and gentlemen, we're just going to keep rocking right along. We've had our first two combatants. How about you there? Who do you want to see fight? Pick a person. I can't fight. It's not that I can't fight. I'm the handsome guy with the microphone. I mean, I can guarantee you, if I was to fight, I'd win every fight, yeah? How about someone else? Who else do you want to see? Come on. Which one's that? Leon. This one?
Leon!
Ladies and gentlemen.
Yay!
This guy's kicked Leon. Ladies and gentlemen, let's introduce Leon as he does deserve. 12 months ago, Leon was watching on that side of the barrier. He decided he liked it, and at age 12 years old, he's been training with us for 6 months, and today is his first public combat. Can you give Leon a cheer? Now, it takes a lot of guts to come out here. Can you find me? How about you there? Yep. Who do you want to see fight Leon? Get us someone tough. Oh, wow. I've got to say, it's usually only the girls who pick handsome Adam Muller. Ladies and gentlemen, handsome Adam Muller, he's one of the Danelaw champions. So we are setting skill and experience against youthful enthusiasm. Ladies and gentlemen, Leon is going to need all your support. Can you cheer him on as we count him in? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Do it! That's it! Come on! You can do it! Go, Leon! Go! Come on!
Yay,
Come on,
Leon!
Run it!
Leon!
Yeah, come on!
Go, son! Go, son! Go, son!
Get in there!
Go, son!
Come on, Leon!
Don't hurt my boy!
Ladies and gentlemen, can you get behind Leon on this one? Ladies and gentlemen, now, Leon, it's his first fight and he's done a good job. So we're going to ask you, is it thumbs up or thumbs down?
Thumbs up!
Thumbs up means yes, I want you to kill him.
No!
Thumbs down means no, I don't want him to live. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll get Adam to stay his hand. Ladies and gentlemen, help him to his feet. Adam, can we give Leon another great big cheer?
Yay!
Well done, Leon.
Yay, Leon!
That's what a 12-year-old can do with a weapon in their hand, yeah? Just ask Lisa. All right, let's keep this fight moving. Ladies and gentlemen, for any of our combatants who've had a fight already, I'll get you to go down on one knee. All the guys standing up are still up for grabs. You in the hoodie, who do you want to see fight next? This one here, this is Shane. Ladies and gentlemen, Shane is also one of our new combatants. He's been with us for less than 12 months. He was a spectator here at Blacktown Fayre last year, and now he's inside the ring. Who do you want to see fight? Who do you want to see fight Shane? How about the really beautiful red-haired girl who's pointing at me? Hi, how you going? What? After the show? Yeah, I can talk after the show. Oh, here we go, ladies and gentlemen. Austin. Now, ladies and gentlemen, Austin is also a newbie with us. Less than 6 months training, but he is an absolute machine. At the end of the day, tourney yesterday, Austin came out on top. So here we go. Can you count them in? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Come on, Austin.
Austin, you big bully!
Ladies and gentlemen, if you haven't worked it out, Austin is new, but he's a dog. Now, tell you what we're going to do, because he's thinking too much of himself, we're just going to keep sending people in on to show Austin until someone knocks him down. Who do you want to see knock Austin down? Come on! No, come on, quick! Are you actually watching this show, buddy? All right, do you want to see anyone fight? What about you in the hat? Who do you want to see fight? Yep. Who? Which one? This one here? Oh, ladies and gentlemen. Austin has drawn the short straw this time. This is the mentor that has taught Jamie to fight. Now, Jamie, you're responsible for creating this dog, so you beat him good, yeah? Can you count these two in? 5, 4, 3, 2. Now, ladies and gentlemen, Jamie's been doing this for 30 years.
Get it! Spin it in King's Cross.
That's 2. Now, ladies and gentlemen, if Austin doesn't take his blows, he just gets hit harder. What's that? Austin's forced to the ground where he belongs. Yeah, I agree. You lie there and think about what you did. Ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause both for Austin for a very big showing and for Jamie. Now we've got to keep this moving, so let's see. Do you want to see someone fight? Who do you want? This one here, ladies and gentlemen. You are about to see a master at work. This is Roy, and he has closer to 40 years experience at this than he does to 30. He was the guy who was a master with spear and two-handed weapons when I started this, getting involved in this 30 years ago. Roy has come all the way up from Canberra. He's a Melbourne fighter, and he's here with a two-handed axe this morning, and he is on a move it as quick as lightning. Now, to take on someone as good as Roy, we need a big opponent. Who do you want to see fight Roy? Which one's that? Oh! Little Ladies and gentlemen, you're setting a guy with nearly 40 years experience against a 14-year-old. You are sick, lady. Ladies and gentlemen, Nick here is going to need all the support you can give him. Count him in. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
No, he's
Shield up! Shield up!
That's one little tap.
Shield up! Get inside! Keep running!
Oh, ladies and gentlemen, I can't say we didn't see it coming. Can we give Nick a round of applause, a big one? And we're not going to put Roy away since he's beaten up a 14-year-old. He deserves to get further kicking. Who do you want to see fight Roy? Jamie, he's already had a fight. Can we have someone else?
another 14-year-old.
Is there anyone who could be in more Croatian here today?
His father!
Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to bring in Darko. Mad Croatian Darko. Ladies and gentlemen, Roy of 30 years experience versus Darko of 80 of really high blood pressure, yeah? Watch Darko, because he does go a bit crazy. Can you count them in? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
It happened. It's everywhere!
Ladies and gentlemen, and you'll notice that Darko's only just got wound up now. Should we keep him going?
Yeah!
Who do you want to see beat up on Darko? Which one? This one? Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, introducing Leon. It's Jacob. How old are you? Jacob is 15 and he's been with us now for about 18 months. Ladies and gentlemen, Jacob's going to need all your support. Can you cheer him on after you count him in? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Ladies and gentlemen, let's not give Darko a breath. Come on, who do you want to see for Darko?
In the corner!
Which one? This one?
Yeah.
This one? Kyle from Uppsala. This will be a great grudge match. Kyle's been wanting to wallop Darko one. Ladies and gentlemen, can you count Kyle in? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Come on, Kyle, let's go! Come on, Ladies and gentlemen, do we have a big round of applause for Kyle? Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to let Darko lie there and think about what a grub he is. And we're going to get Kyle continuing. Now, who do you want to see fight Kyle? Yeah, who? Which one? Oh, the guy casually leaning on his shield, hoping not to get picked to the very end so he can be a big winner. Yeah, that's Kirk. Ladies and gentlemen, Kirk the Behemoth of Danelaw versus Kyle of Uppsala. Can you count them in? 5, 4,
3, 2, 1.
Come on, Kurt! Come on!
Oh, ladies and gentlemen, that was a very big effort. Can we give Kyle a big round of applause? And he's still smiling. Now, who have we got left? Who hasn't had a fight yet? Jono. Coming out, Jono. And where's Martin? Has Martin had a fight? Martin, tell you what, you're going to take on the winner from these guys. Anyone else not had a fight? Tom. No, Jake, no, you don't know what you're doing. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to get Tom out of fight. Kurt, let's go. Ladies and gentlemen, can we have a big round of applause for Jono? It's a testament to what sheer rage can do. Ladies and gentlemen, we've only got 2 fighters left who've not had a fight. We've got Tom and we've got Martin. Jono, did you want to continue or did you want to let these 2 guys fight it out? They can fight it out. Ladies and gentlemen, our last 2 guys who haven't had a fight yet, Martin and Tom. Can you count them in? 5, 4, 3, Ladies and gentlemen, can we have a big round of applause for all of our combatants so far? Now, ladies and gentlemen, in fact, there is one more man that hasn't had a fight yet, and the reason is I'm actually scared to send him out. Because this is a guy who's been raised on a diet of violent video games since he was a baby. Right? He's been eating steak since before he had teeth. Straight off the cow. Ladies and gentlemen, we can barely get the insurance to cover this guy. Can you give it up for cranky Jake Metcalf? How old are you, Jake? Get this. Leon and Jake are the same age. No. Do you want to go stand next to him for a second? Now, can you tell me which one of these two is eating a lot of chicken? Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to stick Cranky Jake Metcalf out here. And if we're going to send someone as violent as Jake out, there's only one man that I dare send out to fight him. Ladies and gentlemen, Kirk the Behemoth of Danelaw. Ladies and gentlemen, it takes a lot of guts to go up against the guy as big as Kirk. Can you cheer Jake on as you count him in? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Come on, Jake, give it a shot. Ladies and gentlemen, can you give it up for Cranky Jake Metcalf? Now, ladies and gentlemen, unless if anyone thinks that this is unsafe, you shouldn't have kids this small doing this. If you don't work for docs, I don't want to know. All right? If you do work for docs, I suggest you walk away now because it's only going to get worse. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we've given you a series of small fights of one-on-ones. How about we now crank this up a notch and start giving you a big fight, yeah? Ladies and gentlemen, what I'm going to do is ask our combatants to separate into 2 teams. Uphill and downhill, apparently it is, but can we get equal teams, please, and equal skill? Righto. Leon, can I get you to go up here? Adam, can I get you to come down here? Darko, I'll get you to stay downhill. Jamie, I'll get you to go downhill. Shane, up. Can we just count it up? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 1, 1.5, 2.5, 3.5, 4.5, 5.5, 6.5, 7.5. I need one more. Nick, can you go up? That's it. We've got 7 versus 8 now. That looks okay. How does that look? Or did I send the wrong side down?
You're good.
I'm good? That's 9 versus... Let's give this a go, shall we? Okay. Yeah, I wish. Ladies and gentlemen, this is where if they get too close to you, I really need you to scream and let us know that they're getting too close. If they push up against the barriers, I need you to push back against the people behind you to get away from them, okay? Because they might not realise. It's going to get pretty crowded in here. Guys, in this first fight, your 2 armies beating up. You do not skirmish, you don't run around and stab each other in the back. You fight through your opponents, yeah? Ladies and gentlemen, can you count them in from 10? 10, 9,
8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go!
Ring those bells!
Come on, Kyle!
Have we still got 2 sides?
3 sides!
Yeah! Come on! Now, ladies and gentlemen, we've got what, 6 for one side still up, so that looked pretty unfair. Can you cheer the guys who took the big hits in that one? And now, we're going to get them up, but this time we're going to change the rules a bit. Everybody up?
You alright, brother? I got a shield to the faces, I went down.
This time, we're going to keep the same teams, but what we're going to do is we're going to mix up the rules. In this second fight, it's going to be what's called a skirmish. Now, in a skirmish, you're allowed to run around and outmaneuver your opponent and try and get behind them if you can. So if you're smaller and quicker, you can try and get around behind and get a stab in the back or in the side. Now, ladies and gentlemen, it's going to get messy again, so I'll get you to scream if they get too close. Can you count them in? 10, 9,
10, 7, 6,
Come on!
Have we still got two teams, or is there only one left?
One left.
One team left. I think we have some victors, ladies and gentlemen. A cheer for our winners. That was not an easy fight. And ladies and gentlemen, a big cheer for the guys who took the big hits on the ground. Now, my lords and ladies, we are going to finish off with one last fight for this morning. And in this fight, we're not going to worry about whether one team's stronger or not, because we're getting rid of teams. Ladies and gentlemen, in this next fight, we're going to offer you what's called an all-in brawl. Okay? Now, an all-in brawl is simple. There are no teams, it is every person for themselves, and you basically, once we count them in, they're just going to hit anything that moves, okay? So ladies and gentlemen, cheer loud, but stay perfectly still. My lords and ladies, can all of our combatants please find yourselves a safe place to start? And ladies and gentlemen, can you count them in? This is going to be a big mess. From 10, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, Come on, Nick. Just you left. Go, Nick.
Go, Nick!
Oh, no, there's three right still in it.
Go, Nick!
Come on.
Go, Nick! 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 Oh! Nick! Nick!
Last one. Ladies and gentlemen, that was one. Ladies and gentlemen, can you give Roy a big, big round of applause? And if you're wondering what Roy's doing, he's just checking up on Austin, who's taken a delicate hit to the face. You right, Austin? Can you give the crowd a thumbs up because they think you're hurt? Yay! Ladies and gentlemen, he's okay. On behalf of Uppsala Medieval Fighting Society and Danelaw Medieval Fighting Society, we hope you enjoyed our first show. We're now going to hand over to two groups that are performing. Over in the Common, we have the Ancient Arts Fellowship commencing their midday show. They're doing a historical battle. And over in the Jousting Arena, we have Medieval Fight Club.
3, 2, 1.
Come on, you two, do something historical.
Come on! Give him that job!
Ladies and gentlemen, the Normans have been victorious once again. Can you give them a round of applause? Now, ladies and gentlemen, have you noticed that we don't look spectacular in our jumping and leaping the way that you see on TV? That's because our gear is real, okay? The stuff that they use to make movies isn't, right? When you're watching Lord of the Rings and Game of Thrones, they're not using real weapons in their combat. That's why it looks so easy to do. The fact is that our weapons are real and our armor is real. By means of demonstration, we want to demonstrate that the weapons that we've got, or the armor that we've got, is heavy. So ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to warn you, never ever volunteer in our shows. Nothing good of it can happen to you, okay? Is there anyone who'd like to volunteer to help us out? If you can just face uphill and receive a blessing from anyone who's willing to give favour, just wave your hands around, do that pokey thing. Alright, now, defending the holy city of Jerusalem were the Saracens, a sophisticated and incredible culture at the time, scientifically advanced and well suited to the conditions of their homeland. The Saracens typically wore lamella. Lamella armour was either leather, like what Kirk and what Tom are wearing, or steel, like what Jamie's wearing. And this was armour that was suitable to be worn particularly on horseback, which was very typical of the style of fighting that was done by the Saracens of the Middle East. Ladies and gentlemen, if I'll just get our Middle Eastern brethren to please face east, receive your blessings. And then we will get them to demonstrate how vicious holy war was when both sides thought that God was with them. Ladies and gentlemen, they'll finish receiving their blessings and then I'll get you to count them in with me.
Ladies and gentlemen, can you count them in? For God's will! For God's will! For God's
Yeah, and that's why we did.
Say that.
Yeah. What?
That's why we say that.
Come on! Yes. TKO.
Come on, James.
Come on, buddy!
Alright. We lost this time.
Yes.
Ladies and gentlemen, you have to tell me if we won because I was out cold for most of that one.
He's like, yes.
Ladies and gentlemen, we've just had a battle that demonstrates how vicious holy war was when both sides thought that God was with them. Can you give a round of applause to all the combatants, those deluded men who fought for God? Tom, just lie down for me.
In the shade, buddy, in the shade.
What we're going to do is I'll just pass this pumpkin on to Kirk, and what he's going to do is place it on Tom, and we're going to chop it in half, and Tom should come out okay.
It's being approved then. Good.
That looks fine to me. Destroyed before it was ever used. So hey, that kid's only 15. Right? You sick people. Ladies and gentlemen, so what we've got is we've got a pumpkin sitting on top of Tom here. He's just lying here, breathing naturally as much as he can and pinching his knees together. Now, ladies and gentlemen, Kirk's got a sword, typical type of sword that we use in our shows. It's not sharp, but it is still very painful to get slugged by. Ladies and gentlemen, if you'll count Kirk in, he'll chop it on Tom. Can you count him in? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Holy
Slice and dice.
Look at that.
Pumpkin soup.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, from where you might be standing, it might not look spectacular, but try and do this to a pumpkin at home with anything, okay? Alright, seriously, if you try and do it with a kitchen knife, if you do it with an axe, it's not that easy to do. But if this...
Let's go!
Hand me my weapon!
Breaking out the big guns because they can't get through with the light stuff. Go on, boys. Lady Charlie's waiting. He's not going to stay a virgin forever. Come on, guys, finish him up. Ladies and gentlemen, I think we're... So tell me, Charlie, do you have any of those tattoos elsewhere on your body? Oh, sorry, there's a fight on. Ladies and gentlemen, just getting back to our fight. We've got a man who's yielding. Now, ladies and gentlemen, for our evil knight, black of heart, but does he deserve mercy? Is it thumbs up or is it thumbs down?
Thumbs up!
Thumbs up means yes, I want you to kill him.
Thumbs down!
Thumbs down means no, I don't want him to live.
What?
Let's go.
Get him out of there. Ladies and gentlemen, can we have a great big round of applause for handsome Sir Adam? And also, ladies and gentlemen, for the Virgin Charlie, a big round of applause. And if you could just count her in, she's just going to kiss me on the cheek. 5, 4, 3. Ladies and gentlemen, big round of applause. That was the Lady Charlie. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I've said it before, never ever volunteer in our shows. Nothing good can come of it, yeah? So how about we crank it up a notch? You've seen some fights between 2 or 3 people. 10, 9.
8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Let's go! Get it!
Do we still have 2 sides? Oh, we're going to 5 against 1. Ladies and gentlemen, I think we have a winning side. Can we have a round of applause for them? Now, for any combatant who can stand up, I'll get you to just take a knee and take a breather. Now, ladies and gentlemen, you may have seen that we have one man out on this field who is more vicious, brutal, and uncontrollable than any other. Ladies and gentlemen, before I introduce to this savage opponent, I'm going to